And so the final judge named Samuel lives a pretty good life and grows super old. His children are supposed to be the new leaders after him to guide Israel to God, but they're described as evil men. So all the elders of Israel assemble to Samuel and say, "Hey, since you're old and your children are not fit to lead, we want a king like all the other nations around us." Samuel's pretty upset to hear this because he feels like his leadership is being rejected. So he goes and prays to God about this, and God tells him that it is not Samuel being rejected, but him, because he was the king of Israel, but now they want a human to fill that position. And so God relents and gives Israel what they wish for. One day, a very tall, dark, and handsome man named Saul encounters Samuel while he's looking for his father's donkeys. God tells Samuel that Saul is the man he chooses to be the king of Israel. And so then Samuel anoints Saul as the king, and the Spirit of God was with him. And then after this, the Amorites attack, and Saul demonstrates his fearlessness and leadership abilities by assembling an army and crushing the invaders. He is then declared king by the common folk. Everything seems to be going pretty well for Saul, until one day the Philistines make camp nearby. He is ordered to go out and destroy them, but before he can do this, he must wait 7 days for Samuel the prophet to come, in order to make a sacrifice to God to ensure their success. So 7 days pass by, and Samuel still has not shown up. Saul is impatient and decides that he's going to make the sacrifice himself, and while he does this, then Samuel shows up, and he's outraged to see that Saul did not wait. Saul tries making excuses, but Samuel explains to him that because he disobeyed the word of God, his kingdom would not last. After this, Jonathan, the son of Saul, leads his men against the Philistines and crushes them. While they are chasing the retreating enemy forces, his own forces are slowed down, because before this, Saul had made an oath that no one could eat that day. Everyone was informed about it except Jonathan, who ate that day. And so his hungry forces could not finish chasing down the retreating Philistines, and they got away. Saul is upset to learn that his son had eaten and basically broken his oath. Jonathan goes and tells his father that his oath was stupid and that it basically cost them wiping out their enemies. Another blunder happens sometime later when God orders Saul to go up and wipe out all of the Amalekites off the face of the earth and to finally end their bad blood with the Israelites. And so God was very serious about this mission, like very, very serious. He wanted them all wiped out, so, to completely get rid of the Amalekites. And Saul screws up by taking back the Amalekites' livestock and even their king as prisoner. Samuel sees this and is super pissed off to find out that Saul had defied the orders of God once again. He then kills the Amalekite king and tells Saul that God has rejected him for being a king and that he will choose someone else who is after his own heart. Then he leaves Saul and he never sees him again. Later, while in search for the new king, Samuel comes across the household of a man named Jesse. Samuel informs him that one of his sons will be chosen to be king. Jesse brings out all his sons, and Samuel is impressed by how kingly most of them appear to be, but God is not impressed, for he's looking for someone with a good heart, because Samuel's only judging by outward appearance, not by their inner characters. So God chooses none of them, and then Samuel asks Jesse if he has any other children. Jesse tells him that he does have one last son, his youngest in fact, named David, but he's a simple shepherd boy. And Jesse didn't even think of bringing him out because he didn't even bother, because he's not as great as compared to his brothers. But Samuel asks to see him anyways, and when he does, God chooses David to be king. Later on, after this event, King Saul is struck by evil spirits, as the Bible describes it, and he goes into rage-filled moods. And some of his servants go around the countryside in search for someone who can play music in hopes that it could calm their tormented king down. And during their travels, they come across young David, and they bring David to Saul, and he plays his harp, which calms the king down, and the evil spirits tormenting him leave. And then David becomes King Saul's official musician and works for him. Some time passes, and the Philistines assemble to face off against Israel once again. The champion of the Philistines is named Goliath, a giant of a man, and he challenges Israel to one-on-one combat, but no one in all of Israel accepts this challenge because Goliath is like 10 feet tall and is incredibly like frightening. So they're basically at an impasse and a standstill. Eventually, though, David goes down to the army to deliver food to his brothers. But while he's doing this, he hears Goliath mocking the Israelites and God for being cowards. David gets angry to hear that this uncircumcised Philistine is mocking God, and so he offers to kill him himself. His brothers mock him, but he goes off to talk to King Saul about it. And David's all like, "Listen, I murdered a lion and a bear protecting my father's sheep. I'll do the same with this Philistine." And Saul's like, "Well, I can't argue with that. Here you go, kid. Have my armor and my sword and my shield. Bye." But it's way too big for David, and so he just basically abandons all of that, and then basically he just brings his sling and 5 stones with him. Goliath sees him approaching him, and he's incredibly insulted that they sent a child to go and fight him. And so he basically threatens to like skin David alive and to feed his corpse to the birds. But David retorts back by saying that he's going to murder Goliath, chop off his head, and have the birds feed on the corpses of him and all his comrades. So, you know, pretty savage. He then uses his sling, and the stone hits Goliath right in the forehead, sinking into his skull. David then goes and takes Goliath's sword and chops off his head. The Philistines run away, and now David is a national hero. Years pass by, and David grows into a man, and he's also in charge of the army for King Saul. And everything is great, and nothing bad ever happened again. Or did it? Dun dun dun.